I guess there are a couple of people who are trying to get in. And if you're an undergraduate who want to get in, you're in. So just try again. We expanded the, we opened it up a bit. So that's all set. And where are we? So last time, well, here's an outline. First of all, I'm going to go and mention, I'm going to talk about convexity throughout the course. And so I'll just quickly define it now and go into more detail next week. And give a bit of a recap. And then it's not the most exciting lecture. I mean, I really have to talk about what we're actually, what's behind the scenes. I mean, something is producing power, and we need to, know what that is. And I mentioned last time that a lot of courses spend the entire semester on just that, the details of solar panels, the details of wind and all of that. And so I'm doing it all in one lecture. So, and there's some amusing things here. It's not all, it won't be totally boring. Okay, so first of all, convexity. So, I'm going to send out a little survey in the break to see what you guys know. Hopefully most of you have seen this concept before. I don't know. But that's a convex function with domain R2 and range R, and that's not. And it says scribbles on Blackboard, so I'll scribble. So convexity is an incredibly important concept in this sort of world, and we'll see as we go along. And so what does it mean? So I've got about 1 million definitions here, and we'll practice them. I'm going to give a baby homework assignment due next week to practice this. So first of all, you have to talk about convexity of a set. So here's some definitions. So first of all, you talk about a set. So you have a set in RD, so in R3, like a ball. It means that if for any 2 points in S, and also for any parameter theta in 0, 1, you take the convex combination of the points, you stay in S. Okay, and big deal. It just says that S looks like that, and if you take any point X and any point Y, all I'm doing with the theta is I'm looking at intermediate points. And so I'm just saying the line segment stays inside of S. So that's a definition. And you need to get to that before you talk about functions. So assume that that's true throughout. Okay, so for a function, there's 1 million definitions, and all of them mean that a function is convex if its graph is bowl-shaped in some sense, all right? So one abstract definition which is useful is you define another set. That's called a sublevel set. You look at all the x for which f of x is less than or equal to t. That's a sublevel set. And that sublevel set has to be convex or empty. It could be that f is never less than t. F might be positive valued. T is negative, so it's an empty set. So we'll take empty sets to be convex. All right, so this is convex for every t. The sublevel set. Yep.
In the line where you wrote f function is set. What's that? So we use after?
Wait. Oh, I'm just saying a function that takes a point in S and maps it to the real line.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah. So this is, this is math. Well, it's math notation we're going to need to digest. Because this is going to be a cost function. I'm going to have some cost for allocating resources, and I'm going to want to minimize it. So T might be money, and I want to look at all allocations which are less than a certain amount of money. And I want to make this small and small and smaller. And so ST is going to be a nice set, and the smaller T is, the nicer it gets. And when it's empty, well, it's not so nice anymore. It means I don't have any resources that will give me a cost of level T. That's where it's used. So that's not the way people normally think of convexity. Normally, there's a more direct way of seeing it. So there's an equivalent definition. So just like starting with the definition of a convex set, we take for any x and y in the set and any theta between 0 and 1, we look at f of theta x we look at that intermediate point and we have this, this inequality. So f at the intermediate point is less than the convex combination of the values at the endpoints. And we really need to draw that. So I'll get rid of this screen for a moment. I hate to do it. I guess I have to. Okay, so just take t equals 1 and s equals 0, 1 for the hell of it. And so again, if this is, well, I took a particular, how about this t? I chose x and y to be special there, so I don't want it to be a variable here. So f of t. So I've got an x here and a y here. And I have an x theta in between. So just call that x theta. Okay, so the value at x theta is right there, and that line shows me the upper bound. So RHS stands for right-hand side. So what I'm doing here is I'm drawing a line above the curve. When theta is equal to 1, I'm at f of x, and when theta is equal to 0, I'm at f of y. And as I move theta between 0 and 1, I draw a line that connects this point at this point above the graph. And convexity means the lines above the curve. Okay? That's what it means. All right. So that's the second definition. There's a third definition that the derivative is increasing. And I want to explain what I mean by almost, but a convex function, its derivative exists for almost every x. So there can be, there can be corners. There could be a couple of corners, but it's just one or two, or, I don't know. It's hard to make this precise, but you can make it precise in a very, very strong sense. And it's increasing, non-decreasing. Okay, so if y is greater than or equal to x, then f prime of y is greater than or equal to f prime of x. All right, and you see that here. The slope is negative. It gets to be 0 at some point. It gets bigger and bigger. The slope's increasing. You know, this is a nice differentiable function, and the slope is decreasing. And fourth, it's not. I won't write this as. I'll put fourth in quotation marks. So these 1, 2, and 3 are 3 definitions of convex functions, and they're all. You know, this is only for d equals 1, but they're all equivalent. This is. I put this in quotation marks because it's about second derivatives. They might not exist, but if the second derivative exists. This is too hard to read. So the second derivative exists, it's non-negative. Well, we knew that because f prime is an increasing function. The second derivative is just the derivative, you know, of an increasing function, so it's positive. All right. So this is a standard way of checking things. You go and look at the second derivative, and both of these can be extended to higher dimensions. You know, especially this. The standard thing. This holds for d bigger than 1 as well. But I won't make that precise because I don't think we'll need it in the course. You know, it's mainly this. So I'm going to pound you all with this. So convex optimization is like the cornerstone of a lot of what we're going to be doing. We really need it, and so you'll all be experts in convex optimization by October. By the first midterm, and way more than it's expected in the book. You know, the book. And they even admit it, that they should have done more. All right. All right, so basically last time, I went through a little survey of the course, and there was some, actually, I was surprised. I mean, a lot of you just nodded when I showed you the negative prices in Texas and all. What was going on? How come you were just, have you all heard of this before? I mean, what do you think? Is anybody, somebody hasn't seen this before? I mean, any guesses on why prices become negative? I mean, tell me in a second. So, I mean, last time, I went through a survey of this book by McKee, basically a depressing story of the future, how there's no hope. Of course, we're going to change our mode of operation as time goes on. I wrote here there are lots of questions after lecture. Well, that's actually a recap from my lecture a year ago. There weren't that many questions after lecture, really. I mean, a year ago, when I gave this almost the same lecture, people ran to me after a lecture saying, what are you talking about? And it was mainly about this, I mean, prices being kind of high. Oh God, look at the color, what happened? It worked last time. Last time we saw red, I'm sure.
Yeah.
How could that change?
It seems like the whole thing switched red.
Yeah, how weird. That's too bad. Well, it's okay. So that should be red. It's like $500 a megawatt hour for power when it should be 30, and there's some purple there, which means it's minus $100 a megawatt hour. So generators are paying a fortune. They're paying $100 a megawatt hour to generate power when they normally would be paid $30 a megawatt hour. And who would do that? Would you do that? I'll pay to give you power. So I mean, a lot of you. I mean, there's some students of mine in the room. Sam and Archie, and we were going to write a online game to make fun of this sort of behavior. So a lot of you do know this, but a generator is these massive spinning machines, and you just don't flip a switch and turn them off. It's a huge deal to get them up and running. It's a huge deal to turn them off. And you can imagine if you had over here, so it's a small area, right? I'm a 100 megawatt generator. What would happen if I could just turn off? You know, I mean, first of all, I can't, but there'd be not enough power around. The prices would go from negative to positive, but then my generator would be turned off. And it might take me 2 hours to get back online, and by that time, who knows? It's just a mess. It's hilarious. I mean, I think and yeah, the colors are much prettier if you. But it's been like this for. It's been like this all the time I've worked in this area, you know, for the last, so I got into this in 2001. After the California power crisis is what sort of drove me into this area. And nothing's changed in all these years, except for this week. If you go to any of these sites right now, they're all blue. I don't know what's going on. It's the nicest week I've ever seen. But we'll see some chaos in the weeks ahead, I'm sure. But this will become clear as we go along, and you'll be amazed to see the science that led to these markets, or the lack of science that led to these markets. Okay, so I'll get to this part of the course, and I hope that the colors aren't going to kill us. But that's supposed to be a little tiny transformer that you see in power lines around town, and that's a old-fashioned oil rig in Texas. Okay, so energy and power. Now, unfortunately, this is the U.S. and we have this awful British system of units. So I really think this really cracks me up. So, I mean, I never really thought about BTUs until I taught the course last year. A British thermal unit, which is really very small, as we'll see. So I decided to go to Wikipedia last night, and I love it. I have seen this before. It's the amount of energy needed to cool or heat 1 pound of water by 1 degree Fahrenheit. Any intuition there? No. They do have a cute little, something that's more intuitive. A 4-inch wooden kitchen match. I've never seen one. Maybe it's one of those big ones you get in the boxes? Yeah, okay. And so you light it, you produce one BTU until it, by the time it burns out. So 1 little kitchen match is 1 BTU. I don't know, maybe that's helpful. But the numbers are horrible because of these strange associations. Okay, so oil is measured in British thermal units. So a barrel of oil will have associated with so much energy and way more than a matchstick. Okay, and the same thing with coal. All this coal in these trains going from West Virginia and all in Ohio, it's measured in BTUs, and so is natural gas. And there's supposed to be sort of an intuition here about these things flowing, because basically this energy will be flowing. All right, these pipelines are insane. The network of gas pipelines in the U.S. It's an amazing achievement that we have all this. So the energy from electricity is measured in kilowatt hours, megawatt hours, or gigawatt hours. All right, and everyone screws this up. I do sometimes, but I mean everyone. Experts screw this up. Energy secretaries screw this up on the units for energy for electricity. Just remember, if you haven't put a little H at the end, you've made a mistake. All right? All right, so 1 kilowatt hour is the energy needed to run a 100-watt light bulb for 10 hours. That takes so much energy. All right? And my pool pump is a kilowatt, so if I run it an hour, it's going to take one kilowatt hour of energy. And so there's a conversion, a perfect conversion. If you had a perfect generator, that would take 3,000. Well, actually, 3.1415. It's almost pi times 1,000. So 1,000 pi. We'll stick to that.
It looks like 3,000.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, it is?
Yeah. No, times 1,000. Yeah, that is a comma. Yeah, that'd be an easy mistake, yeah. No, so 3,412 BTUs is 1 kilowatt hour of electricity. I mean, that approximation it's equality. So yeah, to remember this, take pi and multiply by 1,000, and you get 1 kilowatt hour of electricity. So, all right, but the reason we screw up a lot of the time is that most of the time we don't care about energy. With light bulbs, I couldn't care less about energy until I get my bill. Then I want to see how much energy I consumed over the the month, and my bill is proportional to that. Usually it's power we care about. Okay, and so power is the energy used per unit time. We all know that, but we still screw up, even though we know that. So I get a 100 megawatt generator. That's a 100,000 kilowatts. So it can run 100,000 of these pool pumps, because the pool pumps each consume they each 1 kilowatt devices. So they consume 1 kilowatt per hour. Okay, so you multiply that by 100 times, by 100,000, you get 100 megawatts. All right. So 100 megawatts can power 100,000 pools. Not nearly enough for Florida. There's about 1 million in Florida, so which is pretty amazing. So you need. All right. So let's think about that again. I just said 100,000 pools can be handled by a 100 megawatt generator, but there's not 100,000 pools. There's 1 million. So it's 10 times larger. So you need a gigawatt generator to supply the pools in Florida. Isn't that something? These numbers that's a big number. That's a nuclear power plant. Okay. California's worse, by the way. Florida's not the worst. California has more pools. And so, but power is like the rate of flow in the pipelines. Okay. So energy is flowing through these pipelines. Natural gas is flowing. That's energy flowing. And that can be a real issue. Like during the polar vortex, there were issues in the flow of natural gas in these pipelines. It created real chaos. And one of the reasons they didn't have blackouts in the Northeast was because they could shut down loads. They had demand response, they had contracts with consumers, and they were able to shut down huge amounts of power. And PJM says if they couldn't have done that, there would have been a blackout. It would have been the end of the. There would have been a blackout for days. So it's this transportation issue is huge in the energy industry. Now here's an example of. This is just what this turns out to be 2014. I could have given you an error for every month for the last 10 years. This is just one, but I mentioned you guys should all subscribe to Utility Dive. Did anybody not get my email about? You're not on the. I should put you on the auditors list. You didn't get an email. Are you on the list of any sort? Or?
Send it to webmail.
I put in a CC to your email address, whatever that is.
Okay, so
Yeah.
I'm so used to getting it forwarded still.
Well, I get it forwarded to some email address, whatever you have. Yeah, okay. But Utility Dive is fantastic. I mean, it makes my day once a week. It just tells me I'm going to be rich in a few weeks. I don't know if I believe it. But here was an example where they were trying to get people excited, and they were talking. I mean, it's a serious blog, but they were talking about Southern California Edison and other companies' plans for utility scale storage. And you can't read this very well, so I highlight it. You can't read that either. Luckily, I expanded it. I don't know what's going on with the projector. But look at this, 250 megawatts of storage. And it's going to cost $5 billion. Any idea what that means? What?
It's really expensive.
Well, for what? I don't know. It might be really cheap. It might be. No, this gets to my point. It could be really cheap or really expensive. Remember, what is a megawatt? It's energy per unit time. You know? It doesn't have the H. They forgot the damned H. So if it's going to supply 250 megawatts forever, that's an awesome battery. I want one. I mean, they forgot the damned H. It's amazing, And I do think, actually, was it a total mistake? I think that, because I found some later articles where they said it was going to supply 200 megawatts, but would have 4 hours at that rate. So how many megawatt hours? 800 megawatt hour batteries. And I think it is a lot of money. You know, I think it sounds like a lot of money. Roughly a gigawatt hour is what it really is.
If we figure out that this is very long-term plan, it lasts forever.
That's it. They don't last forever. These batteries, you know, they have finite lifetime. No, it's amazing how much money is being spent on batteries, and I don't know why. As we go through the course, you know, we'll see where batteries are really valuable and they should be used, and where they don't make sense at all. And they really are going ahead with all this. So they're deploying, spending billions and billions and billions and billions on batteries. And actually, you know, the original press release on California incentivizing this, spending billions on batteries, they actually had the same error. They talked about how many megawatts they would buy over so many years. And I've talked to people in California, and it was never clarified about how much actual energy storage was going to be sought. It's amazing error. It's unbelievable to me. And yeah, that number is insane. I agree with you. I don't know. I don't understand. So there's something weird with the accounting. All right, so anyway, so the conversion. So basically, the reason I'm doing all this mainly is because we want to talk about this conversion of fuel to power. And there's a notion of efficiency. So, you know, old-fashioned generators might be only 33% efficient. You know, they throw away 2/3 of that energy. And so, and that means that you have this ideal, but you have to divide it by 0.33. So you need 10,000 BTUs of fuel to get 1 kilowatt hour of energy. Okay. All right, so that's a really crappy generator. That's called the heat rate. All right. So that ratio of this ideal divided by the fraction, you know, by the efficiency factor there, is a heat rate. And you really are going to have to memorize this. Heat rate. You know, you make flashcards. You'll get a page of notes for an exam. You know, you're going to have to remember what this definition is. Heat rate turns out to be important, okay? Because we're going to be doing, again, these resource allocation problems. How much solar do I take on? How much gas turbine? How much coal? And we have to understand how to do this accounting. So we need to know these definitions. So it's just a bit of language that we'll be memorizing. I bet there'll be 20 terms you'll have to memorize. That's one of them. But the new generators are like 60% efficient. And this is a beauty. Like, Florida is the best. I mean, Florida has the most expensive but most efficient generators in the country. And this is a new one, which is 60% efficient. So its heat rate is this magic number, the ideal divided by 0.6. So 5,700 BTUs per kilowatt hour. And it doesn't look very beautiful there. It's too bad. There are better pictures. But so it just takes this much fuel. Instead of 10,000, it takes 5.7 thousand BTUs to create a kilowatt of energy. So what does it mean? So with 5.7 BTUs of fuel, so you know, 5.7 million British thermal units, can I run for 1 hour to create 1 megawatt hour of electricity? It's a trick question. I know. So I want you to think about this. So, you know, basically, it's a natural gas plant. I cart over enough natural gas to get this number, this 5.7 million British thermal units of fuel. I give it to this generator and say, run for an hour and give me, and supply that much electricity.
So for X megawatt hour, I need X hours to get X megawatt, I need X hours to run that generator.
Yeah.
Which is a sign of not efficient.
But here I'm saying 1 hour. That's the thing. Yeah. To create 1 megawatt hour of electricity. What's that? Well, it depends. I mean, I don't know.
It depends how quickly it burns the fuel.
Yeah.
Every hour that the generator is running, if it has to supply 1 megawatt hour, consume 5.7.
Yeah.
And it'll be hard to consume that much fuel in 1 hour.
Well, actually, it may be this is too small. This plant is meant to supply a gigawatt, a power of a gigawatt. So in 1 hour, it's a gigawatt hour of energy. So this is 1/1000th of its normal running rate. It's such a tiny amount of energy, believe it or not. Even though it sounds massive, this thing's designed to run at 1 gigawatt power. So asking it to run it at 1/1000th its normal rate wouldn't be feasible physically. That's all. The only reason it's a trick question, and that's what your point is. There's a certain power specification for this plant. It can run at a gigawatt, maybe 900 megawatts, but not 1 megawatt. Not at 1 megawatt. So it's got all sorts of constraints.
So is there like a relationship with the capacity and then it can run at with its efficiency?
Yes. So is there a relationship between efficiency and what power output it's delivering? Well, that's the whole point of the lecture. And I should have said this. I will be much better about giving you reading lists and telling you where we are. This is all out of chapter 2 of the book. So I should have said that at the top. There's a lot of editorializing that's not in the book, but things like this are right out of the textbook. Okay, so let's get into those details. So let's actually look at thermal generators. So I said that Florida has some of the most high-tech generators in the country. This is their old thermal unit, and this is the new one. And this cost, $1.2 billion. And I don't know what this old one came, but it's been blown up and replaced by this new one. And here's how it works in Florida. If FP&L decides they make a lot, they spend years saying, hey, we should put a $1 billion gas plant here and here and here, and then they go to the Public Utility Commission and they fight and they say, hey, we want this money and we want to be able to increase our rates and so forth. And after some negotiations, the Public Service Commission, Public Service Commission, PSC, says, okay, rates go up, the money's invested, and these fantastic new generation comes in. And it sounds really corrupt, this backdoor dealings between CEOs of Florida Power and Light and the Public Service Commissioner in Tallahassee. They're off playing golf together, and it could be really corrupt. And I think there's a history of corruption. But on the other hand, Florida Power and Light has the cheapest power in the country, and GRU has the most expensive. It's like Hawaii. And I like GRU a lot. They do a lot of things to incentivize energy savings and all sorts of things. In fact, GRU is the only place in Florida where solar is incentivized, or has been. But it's this old-fashioned system is working pretty well in Florida. So we get the best, most efficient generators in the country. I'll come back to this. Places where you have other different kinds of markets that are apparently less prone to corruption, nobody's willing to invest. So that'll be a theme of this course as well. What are the incentives for that, or for cool demand response programs? That's a real issue in this field. Okay, but let's study this. Why is this so good? So first of all, what's a thermal generator? Well, there's many categories. First of all, there's the old-fashioned original. You'd burn something, oil, gas, biomass. That's a famous biomass plant in Gainesville, which is about the worst investment ever made, as it turns out. Very expensive. They signed a very bad contract, so they're paying a lot of money for electricity. You burn something, heat water, make steam, and you spin a turbine. And this is from Wikipedia. It's a beautiful turbine that spins with steam blasting by. Okay, and so you can also get heat from underground, that's geothermal. You can get it from the sun, that's solar thermal. Okay, so you get the sun's rays, you concentrate that heat, and maybe you heat up oil or do something, and with that heat you spin something. All right, and of course uranium, nuclear power. All right, so that's one example. You burn something, you create heat, so you can spin a turbine. There's something completely different, which is a gas turbine generator, and that's a jet engine, basically. You know, so jet engines aren't heating up water to spin. They spin a create. I don't know anything about how jet engines work, but gas turbine generators are exactly the same science, and I'm sure many of you know quite a bit about this, and I'd love to hear a lecture if one of you are prepared to give it. But it's expanding gas, creates a force, and eventually something does spin, but you don't do it through boiling water as you do here. So it's a massive jet engine, but just imagine a gigawatt jet engine. You know, it's amazing. They're massive, massive jet engines, basically. And these turn out to be extremely efficient compared to these. So when people talk about natural gas being efficient generation, they're talking about gas turbine generators and not these kinds where you boil water. All right.
How do you know about how much more efficient they are?
Yeah. I don't know. I can only give you a guess. I mean, you've got. Yeah. Let me come back to you with that answer. I'll give you some numbers next time. I've got them somewhere. But it's very hard to do the accounting, as we'll see. Because to make these so efficient takes a lot of tricks. You know?
It's like the highest efficiency that's going to be met
Yeah.
by a thermal generator.
Yeah. Yeah, it's about 65%.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's what we get here. Yeah. Yeah. And so, okay, and here's where we get into what we're going to have to be. This is what we're going to need for the next weeks. So we're going to have an input rate of fuel, you know, to these generators, and they're going to be producing electricity, and we're going to, you know, deliver electricity at a corresponding rate, and we want to understand that correspondence. That's the discussion we had a moment ago, you know, about can that massive generator supply power at 1 megawatt? Well, no, it can't. All right. Okay, so an ideal generator again with this. Is there a typo there?
Yeah, I think that should.
That should be a comma. Wait.
No, you have mega BTUs.
Oh, mega. Okay, God. Yeah, the units can be confusing. All right, so pi mega BTUs per hour is about 1 megawatt of electricity. All right, and I don't know how to visualize that natural gas coming in. That's too bad. I wish I could see it. You know. And then we get these curves, which we really have to think about. All right. So we've got an input in mega BTUs per hour, and then an output in power. All right. And we're going to go along here. We say, I'd like to supply 1 gigawatt, and I look at what flow of fuel has to come into my plant. You know, and then I go over here and say, I'd like to supply it 1 megawatt, and I say, sorry, I can't do it. You know? So it's infeasible. That was sort of the joke earlier on. All right, but the thing is that, you know, this British thermal units, I mean, the reason that a year ago when I first started this course, I had to say, what the hell is that? is because I'm used to immediately translating to dollars. You know, with a flow of natural gas coming in, that's a flow of dollars. And I don't care about the raw materials, I care about the money. And so it's really, for a given power output, how many dollars do I have to spend? And that's the characteristic we really need to understand. All right, and so question here, is this convex?
Convex in that range.
Yeah, so what's S? S. So I've got convex set S, and I've got a function from S to R. You know? So there's a function there. And so I guess, you know, in that range, you mean that's S. So S is an interval, and this is a convex function because it's the bowl-shaped. You know, any line segment is above the curve, you know, over any 2 points. The trouble is, in physical terms, it's not convex at all, because really, it's convex in this range. It's sort of infinity here because it's not feasible, you know. And unfortunately, that's feasible. I can turn the thing off. And so it's really a function which is 0, infinity, and then convex. That turns out to be a real issue in terms of allocation, because convex optimization problems are really simple. And this turns out to not be convex for this simple little thing that we have it's defined to be 0 there, then infinity, and then convex. It causes issues, as we'll see. But if you assume all the generators are on, you've got a convex problem. If you assume that they're all operating in this range, then there's no problems. But you can't always assume that. Wait. Wish I could. Where am I? All right. So this is a good place. This will put me to sleep if we don't take a break. So and Thursdays we'll always take a 5 or 10 minute break halfway through. And this is a good time just because, again, this is something which, there's no concept. It's like we need a dictionary. So we'll get to say a few more things about thermal generators and then talk about other kinds of generation and storage after a break. But before you break, I want to find out what your backgrounds are. And so if you could, just over the next 10 minutes, just fill this out. You don't have to put your name on it. I just want to find out what your interests are and what you know. Yeah, and I can get some water. So this curve is really important, okay? So the idea of, what does it cost per hour to deliver energy, deliver so many, for given power output, which is energy per hour units. And at least it is typically convex in this range. This graph's important. This graph's not so important, except to make this one point. So remember, the heat rate was a measure of efficiency, and big is bad. And ideally, you'd love it to be, a multiple of pi. That's what we saw. But typically, we do have something like this, where to get the optimal efficiency, like that 60%, we have to run this thing near its peak power. And the heat rate gets worse as you go down. And how much worse, it depends on the technology. And that's a really important thing, because if generators are asked to combat the volatility of wind, say, and we saw that wind or solar has a lot of volatility, so they have to adjust their output up, down, they're all over the place. It's, it can cost something, so again, for a 60% efficient plant, we saw the BTU was 5,700. So that would be over here somewhere. But again, this is all steady state. This is all steady state fuel in, steady state power up. And if you talk about ramping these generators up, ramping them down, or up, down, in a response to ramps in sun and wind, for example, I don't know the answer. I've never been able to get a straight answer. I think it's information that power industry holds secret. I don't think they want the information out because, they want to withhold as much information as possible about their costs. Hydro generators claim it costs them a lot of money to ramp up and down their output, but I can't find a paper proving it. It's really hard to know. I do have a contact. By the end of the semester, I'm going to try to find out something. There's somebody at GE I found recently who's promised to try to help. But this is, again, steady state, fuel in, power out, just all this smooth. And really the cost could depend on the rate of ramping and all of that.
So will that graph always be convex then?
Well, that's not convex, right? Because it looks convex over here maybe, but I see a shoulder over there. So this will never be convex probably. This will typically be convex. The actual, amount of the fuel rate as a function of the power rate. But this is a strange ratio, H over P.
Would there ever be a graph where the heat rate is lowest, like
I don't, it's,
The middle, like, is it a?
yeah, oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'll bet there are. I'll bet there are examples where it says a minimum in the middle. Yeah, for sure. Well, in fact, here I'll bet you could push this up a bit. it might. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to give the wrong idea. It's not always at the extreme. Yeah, so the next thing that is important is marginal cost. Now, notice that the marginal cost is increasing. How is it defined? So it's the rate of spending. How does that increase with my increase in power output? So it's just basically, if I increase my power output from P to P plus delta, then I'm going to get an increase in fuel rate, which is going to be a derivative, dH dP. So it's going back to that first curve, this one. It's a derivative of this. Yeah.
Capital H, fairly clear.
Well, yeah. Well, I should go back a bit. Before I convert to dollars, capital H is here, which is the fuel per hour coming in, and this axis is always power, so energy per hour over here. And so it's the slope of this, which is marginal cost. So I don't need to derive calculus for you. Marginal cost is just the derivative of this curve. All right, so the slope, and that marginal cost here is increasing. So my rate of spending is increasing as I increase the power output, and so that's all. So, and we don't need this graph. I mean, basically, marginal cost will become an important concept. It's a waste of time to get into it now, really. Okay, so here's some fun. So how do you get to 60% efficiency? That's a question that was sort of asked. So it's not just from these fancy gas turbine generators. It's way more than that. And again, I don't know all about it, but this is crazy to me, but it's a fact. So, there are gas turbine generators that, I don't know if there are many of them, which just dump out hot air. like the jet engines, you've seen them. There's hot air coming out of those jet engines. And that's it. There's energy in that hot air. Well, they actually take they collect the heat somehow, and they use it to drive a old-fashioned steam turbine. So when you hear combined cycle generators, that's all they mean, is that they have another less sophisticated generator that takes the hot air, makes steam, and runs another turbine.
I've seen
Isn't
some
that wild?
hot air to produce steam.
These hot air to produce steam, well, that might be what's going on here. Yeah. Because they have the gas turbine generators and then on top of that they have the steam turbines. Yeah. And that's how they do it. All right. Now, it leads to a question. Again, this is the cost. This was just built a couple years ago, and it's 1.2 gigawatts at Cape Canaveral. It leads to another question: why do it that way? So think about what's actually taking place in Florida. Where we not so much oil. We have natural gas and coal, and and also nuclear in Florida. We take that to run a turbine. So the fuel creates heat. The heat runs a turbine to make electricity, which is sent to our homes. And my house is electrically heated, and I create heat. It's crazy, right? I mean, imagine the whole efficiency of this operation. It's just, so we're saying, wow, 60%, but then the whole thing, it's probably 20, I don't know. I mean, oh God, in my house, 20, 15, the way it leaks. You've been in my house, yeah. So what they do is these cogen plants. So there's one right here. So the little Duke generator it's near, it's very close, a very short walk from here. If you walk straight from here to, what's the first street west again? Center's just east. What's it called again? Gale Lemerand. Just in between, there's a little 100 megawatt, I think, power plant. And it's a cogen plant where you skip this, And instead of collecting the hot, waste to run another turbine, you heat up water and you use that for some other purpose. Okay. And people need hot water for all sorts of things, in particular for heating buildings. And so in Europe, it really makes a lot of sense. You need a lot of energy for cooling, and having district hot water is awesome. So you take that waste heat, you heat an underground water system, and it's a beautiful storage way of storing energy as well. So it's that's like, believe it or not, that's science fiction. That is considered because you can do this anywhere. That's considered the best way to get more efficiency out of generation. And there's some hype around this. I mean, this funny article. Cogeneration helps New York University meet Bloomberg's climate challenge 6 years ahead of schedule. Basically, New York University did just this, create district hot water from a cogen plant, and they claimed it was incredible savings in fuel. It's been in place in California forever, and it's being used more and more. I mean, it's a little thing, but it's how we should be thinking about urban planning in the future. When we decide to have a new housing development, we should be thinking about having district hot water in place, so you can make it easy to have these cogen plants. You need infrastructure to make this work. It sounds like a minor thing, but it's a lot of it. It can make a huge efficiency improvement. Okay, so that's enough on thermal. So main thing, remember, are those convex curves. Those sorts of curves. That's the main takeaway. Okay, so for hydro, there's not much to say, except, of course, you're not burning fuel. There are issues, though. I mean, we're not going to do this in the course, but there are engineering issues that nobody knows how to solve. It's fun to talk about it. There's theses to be written on this. Guess what they take as the rate of flow of water? They take it as acre times foots per hour.
The most ridiculous thing they can find.
Yeah, I know. Acres times feet. Ah! It's hilarious. Oh, of course, it's cubic meters. Yeah. It's really funny. Why acres times feet? It's a comedy. But there they have instead of heat rate, it's water rate versus power, and you get a convex curve again, which is interesting. But it's you've got this convex increasing function, but it's a really difficult problem dealing with hydro. Even though it's a blessing, it's also a curse. It's a blessing because, for example, as I mentioned, the Pacific Northwest, that blue there is the generation from hydro, and look at how they can ramp it up and down. I mean, it's just wham. They can control the water flow to those generators just very, very quickly. And they have a very wide range of power output as well. So that's the blessing. The problem is that you've got a big network of dams, and there's a control problem there of how to keep the dams level, how to save the salmon. The salmon want to swim upstream. You got to make sure there isn't runoff, and the salmon actually can go up during the right season. So you get a big network problem. It's not so bad in BPA, in this Pacific Northwest area, except for 1 month of the year. So in April, they're screwed. That's salmon season, it's the most water. The dams start to fill up. They really have trouble. In Brazil, they've got almost all hydro. It's amazing. And they've got other renewables as well. And just a tiny 11-12% for fossil fuels, and a little bit of nuclear as well. So Brazil's lucky, but then they've got an incredibly complex network of dams and rivers, and they've got environmental issues that people really do care about. They do, just like the salmon in Pacific Northwest has much bigger environmental issues in Brazil. And this is just a map of them all. Look at the plans from a couple of years ago. In operation, they only have a few. And all of these are planned, I guess some of them already been done. And it's a network So there'll be dam after dam after dam after dam, and they all have to be kept level and all of that. So it's a fun control problem, that hasn't really been dealt with properly, because trying to make sure that you equalize all the dams while fulfilling power requirements. It's not as trivial as it sounds. It's really it's fun, and I don't think there are any good papers on this. So the next thing is that, again, just like I mentioned. District hot water is a great way of storing energy. Again, if to deal with solar power, when the sun is shining, I'll heat up the water, and when it's not, I won't. So you're storing thermal energy in hot water. Hydro is a wonderful way to store energy as well. A lot cheaper than batteries if you've got a place for it. And so again, it's a beautiful battery. Because you can ramp up and down the power output of dams so well. And it's been in use forever. And basically in places like this is 2013, that makes it old-fashioned. So this is thinking about the case where you have peak demand in the daytime and very little at nighttime. And so at nighttime, when there's plenty of energy and not much demand, you would pump water uphill, and then during the daytime you'd let the water come out and run a generator. And there's a 25% energy loss, which is not the end of the world in some cases. So the round trip cycle, it takes energy to pump the water up. You get energy back when it comes down. You'll lose 25% through the whole process. Right? But it's old-fashioned. Can anybody tell you, at least in some parts of the world, this is a very old-fashioned way of thinking of things. And anybody here know? Somebody who's not a graduate student working with me. Why is this sort of an old-fashioned point of view? That you've got insufficient energy maybe during the day, a lot of demand, and less at night. And so you pump the water up the hill at night, and then let it drain out to provide energy in the daytime.
Because people work at nights.
Well, that's an interest. That's not true yet. I'm sure it'll be more and more true. But it's more about supply than demand. Yeah. So thinking about like Germany, as we mentioned last time, and California and a lot of places. So this whole thing is changing.
Would it have to be with solar?
Yeah.
Solar during the day, so there's a lot of energy during the day.
That's the biggest thing is solar. Yeah. So California, this is all flipped around now. California, they've got a big. If you take the demand and subtract off the solar, it's amazing. You've got a trough in the middle of the day, and that's actually when you'd want to store energy. You're actually getting to the point where you have more energy than you know what to do with. But this sort of picture is stuck in people's heads, and it's a strange thing. So it's really, what to do with storage is much more interesting and important today than it was even a few years ago. And there's not much of it. So if you look at pumped storage, you look at the Pacific, you can't see this very well. That's the Pacific Northwest, where there's a lot of hydro. There's one tiny little spot there, and where is that again? Yeah, that's in, it's in the dry part of Washington State. So there's these beautiful Cascade Mountains. Is that right? Cascade, I think. And on the west side, you've got lots of water. On the east side, it's dry and not as pretty. And so there's one little pump storage unit there. And this is the rest of the distribution. I hope you can see it. What is that again? That's California? Yeah, that's California. So you can see there's a lot in Los Angeles, for example. And I'll bet that's also for irrigation. I'll bet that they've got the fact that they need the dams anyway for irrigation and all of that. So they use it for energy as well. But notice this. This is from the Energy Information Agency, the depository of wisdom on energy in the United States. And it says capacity in megawatts. And I didn't see a megawatt hour anywhere. So can it supply a megawatt for eternity or for 1 second? How long can supply 300 megawatts? It's amazing. It really is amazing. So this air you'll find everywhere. So keep your eye open. All right. So there's all sorts of other ways. People, because storage is becoming more and more important, you'll see crazy ideas. And these are all real ideas. So there's this gravity power thing where they, I forget this image I won't even bother, but you compress air and you store this compressed air in salt caverns. That's being done. So that pressure then can be used to extract energy later on. And all the time, I mentioned hot water. There's a statistics building in Lausanne, Switzerland. They use that. They have a big hot water tank underneath the building, and they use it to store energy. Basically, when there's lots of excess energy from Germany, they can take it and heat up the water. Switzerland's great at arbitrage, and they do make money off of Germany's volatile energy. It's true. They've also got a lot of hydro, so they can help, with arbitrage. Storing energy in molten salt. So you use energy to melt salt and store energy that way. And you can extract the energy from heat. This is not a joke. You get a retired railroad car and you pull it to the top of a hill and you get energy by letting it go back down. I've got, in the commented notes there, actually have these. I think actually you can click this and get a link to the article. I better double check. I can give you the sources, but this has all been done in the last few years. Some of this is older than others. There's, batteries, as we've mentioned. There's flywheels have become very big. Some of you might have heard about Beacon Power and their lobbying efforts to get flywheels into the market. And they're scary as hell. Imagine, imagine a flywheel that can store a megawatt hour of energy. I don't know about this. It may be good in some places. It scares me. For small things. I'm talking about grid level, megawatt hour. Yeah.
There's a new Porsche 918 that uses a curve system, the kinetic energy recovery system. So it's a flywheel where the passenger seat would be.
Oh, I see.
It actually stores energy in there.
Okay. Man, that sounds awful, though. A Porsche adding that weight, What do Porsche drivers think about making their car that much heavier, I wonder how that works, yeah. That's wild. So the other one is ultracapacitors. So that's something that I wish we could get into the course, but capacitors are really important in the grid for basically shaping the dynamics of the power grid. And they're also used for storing power in some sense. And what do we mean by that? Is that storage? And that's something to think about throughout the course, is that storage? And it depends on what you mean. So the definition of storage is quite tricky, I think that's one of the reasons people make these mistakes. Oh no! Well, maybe we should be happy. I thought it'd be done early, but not this early. Anyway, a new topic next time. So, God, I'm 20 minutes earlier than I thought I'd be. That's funny. Any questions?
Yeah.
Well, you first. Yeah. Yeah.
Does Florida have a regulatory commission like ISO in California?
Oh, yeah. So that's a great question. So I'll get to you. So. So it's not, you see, I'll repeat it. So you've got these two ways to operate the grid. So there's two models really. Okay, so one is what's called the old-fashioned And an example is Florida Power and Light. And this is what many people, the power economists say is despicable, because of this potential collusion between, say, FP&L and GOU and the state government. The fact that basically they go off and play golf and make deals and come back with a plan, and they basically have a lot of autonomy, so they decide what to buy in terms of transmission, in terms of generation, and make long-term plans over 10 years for where to install that generation and how to update things as they go along. So there were problems with this. There were genuine issues, because sometimes the problem is that the only way for FP&L or GOU to increase their rates is to convince the Public Service Commissioner, the state government, they've done something good. So GOU does that by saying, hey, the population wants incentives for energy efficiency, incentives for solar, and so forth. They prove to the state that that's what the people of this community want. They spend a lot of money to make it happen, and they get rewarded with rate hikes. And that's meant like 16 cents a kilowatt hour. And look, I remembered, kilowatt hour, 16 cents a kilowatt hour. So how much money per energy? And I think that's right, which is similar to Hawaii, I believe. And in FP&L, they have claimed that their population couldn't care less about solar or anything, and have argued only on economic grounds, and said, hey, if we install this $1.2 billion generator, we'll improve our efficiency by 20%. And so they've argued with the government on those grounds, and their rates end up being 12 cents per kilowatt hour. And so many argue that GOU is bad and FP&L is good, but no, the population have different interests. So the Gainesville area has really lobbied hard for energy efficiency incentives and solar incentives, and the biomass plant, which was very costly, and that's given rise to these higher costs. So I mean, I kind of love it. Different populations, end up getting maybe higher costs, but different products. Two, the ISO. So independent system operator or regional transmission operator, we'll see these acronyms again, don't worry. FERC, and you'll hear me say FERC with tension in my voice. So, in the late 80s, there was a big push to deregulate the power industry and get rid of this system. And the first experiment really was in Chile, where they basically took the system that was in place in Chile, where everything was actually owned by the government, and just sold it off to private companies. And there was a huge drop in prices for a few years, and everything went out of business. So it was all then had to be, the government had to actually bail out the private companies that went out of business, and now they basically are back to this sort of system. But go to the University of Chicago website, and you'll see this is hailed as the biggest success story for deregulation, even though it lasted a few years. Then it was tried out in California. They had like a free market for power. It lasted a few years. They tried it in Illinois. It lasted 1 year. The prices went from $30 a megawatt hour to $5,000 a megawatt hour, and they shut down the program. But so they've now, changed the market structure to put more caps on it, and if you're one of these big balancing authorities, massive. So examples are here. You mentioned California ISO, PJM, New York ISO, ISO New England, and Midwest ISO. And yeah, SPP is the newest. So SPP was over here, and they just became an ISO last year, and they have free markets. So I can come along with my generator and say, hey, I'm in, and they have to, subject to certain rules, they have to let you in. But FERC puts rules on these markets that are so strange you won't believe it. So that's what you've got in these regions. So Florida's not included. So Florida is not a member of anything. SPP would love to grab Florida, but they won't because Duke and FPL, Duke is in both, but they're too powerful to let SPP take over. But the fact is that the rules here are so strict. What I want to argue in this course is they really block incentives for innovation, because it's the wild, wild west. Anyone can come in and play the market, and everyone is subject to auctions every 5 minutes or once a day, and so the income is incredibly uncertain. So it means there's no long-term planning. So who's going to invest $1 billion in a generator when putting that generator in means an oversupply of energy, means the prices will crash down? So you just hit a nerve. So there's something I really want to explain throughout the course, is that a sort of a high-frequency trading, real-time markets like this, they sound really cool, and it sounds like the American dream, and it sounds like what America's based on, competition. That's nonsense. So I really want to explain to you this course is that notion just doesn't make any sense in this context, because energy is very special. The main thing is that sunk cost, $1 billion to slap down a generator. After that, creating electricity is easy. So anyway, so the short answer is no. Florida has the old-fashioned vertically integrated system, and none of these places has cheap electricity like Florida. Nobody has that in any of these places. And why? I think it's because none of them have these efficient generators. There's just no way. So yeah.
One question.
Okay. All right. So anyway, we'll come back to that. And this is what I annoy some of you. I want some of you to hold on to prove Sean wrong by the end of the course. I'd love it. I'd love a debate. What's that?
Is the cost constant in Florida?
Yeah, but it's been, yeah. Oh, yeah, well, there's none of these auctions, nothing like that. Oh, every time FPL wants to increase the rates, they have to go through and write a 1,000-page document, play golf with somebody in Tallahassee. I'm kidding, but I'm sure that's true in part. That's networking as well as coming up with a business case. But it's very open. Anyone can see these documents, Unlike here, where you don't know the cost of generators, you don't know all sorts of things are held secret, so at least here there's a lot of transparency. So it's a very, very predictable. So they have a very predictable return on investment, and the risk is low, and that's another reason they can keep cheap prices. Here you've got very high risk. You invest and you don't know if you get a return or not. But this, I'm going to say a few more words about this next time, because the textbook is really funny on this, because the textbook talks about this framework of markets a lot, but apologizes constantly. And I'll broadcast out a few paragraphs where they say we're ignoring that $1 billion, and they say, well, we'll assume it's been taken care of in coming up with their marginal cost curves and all that. But that makes no sense. Once I've sunk $1 billion, the notion of marginal cost makes no sense. Marginal cost is how much more will I have to pay for an extra power output. That takes for granted I've spent the $1 billion. So the book's aware there that there's a contradiction in all of this. And I'll come back to this every 3 weeks. Okay, so thanks for bringing it up now.
Did you say earlier the
well, I'm going to sign a homework tonight, just a short one, due next week. So.
Will it be on the Sakai page or will it be on the website?
what I'm going to do is I'm going to send you out, it'll be on Sakai, but I'll also send out an announcement to your, so hopefully your email address is linked to Sakai, and so I can broadcast, yeah.